Okay, the next thing that we probably need to talk about is what kind of stock you're using, and how you're cutting it, planing it, getting it all prepared. So very important, obviously, to have straight pieces, very square corners. I did a couple of the just test setups and everything without a planer, and after I got the planer, the joinery came out a lot better just because everything was nice and square. So the stock that I'm using is Douglas fir, and when I got it out of a 4x4, cut it down, planed it, and when I go in and measure the stock, I'm getting it right at 1.5 inches when I run it through the planer. But in several of these pieces, I go through, and even though it's planed to the right thickness, it's not necessarily really square, and that's not going to show up, but my joint really isn't going to be that tight if I'm off a little bit. So running it through the joiner makes a big difference in all of your joints. Just getting all of spending a little time getting everything set up in the beginning makes a big difference in the results down the road. So I'm going to zip these through the planer, and then we'll get started on making all the divided window cuts. Okay, so now we've run everything through the joiner, and we have nice straight square surfaces to work from. Really all we need is two surfaces that are flat and square, and that would be the face that you're actually looking at and the inside where the detail goes. We're going to measure off of everything from those surfaces. So if you have two that are good and square and two the right dimension, then you're good. Got one side on this board that is kind of chewed up a little bit. I'm not too worried about that because that will end up getting cut down anyway. But I've gone ahead and written what the parts are. Here's the face on the top, and I wrote inside for these two surfaces that are very square to each other. Okay, so understanding the joints that we're about to do. So here is our top joint, and basically it is a bridle joint that we're gonna, this is the top sash, the bottom rail, and this is the side piece. Those go in nice and square to each other, and then we'll get the full detail of what it looks like. So this sash will slide up, and this is the bottom sash, and then right where those two come together, right in that joint, will be a small piece of that rubber foam. That'll be my seal. So the first joint that we're going to start making, and we'll come back to the top, is this joint here, and we'll open those up a little bit, and you can see we also have that 45-degree cut here and here. That way when the detail is cut in there, the detail is cut at that 45-degree, and you get a nice corner. If we look at the joint here, it is just a little butt joint up into there, and like I said, these can run long on your top rail and your bottom rail, so they'll get cut off after we're all done. So the first cut that we're going to do is on our top rail and bottom rail, and then we'll put in a divider and do to the other end. Since I'm just using some scrap on this one, I'm not going to do the full 7 and 13/16, just not enough material here, so I'm just going to do a little mini window and we'll see how that goes. So my first cut that I'm going to do on the top rail and bottom rail, and we'll put the side rail away for a minute and all of these demos. So the first cut that we're going to do is, is right here. Just measuring in. If you're doing the full window, it would be 2.5 inches that you're going to set the saw to. And I could do 2.5. Okay. Just making sure I had enough material. So I already have in the bed marked. So when I made the bed and did the first pass with the dado cutter, this side of the sled is cut right to where the side of the blade is. If I measure out here 2.5 inches, put that stop right on a mark that I already have set up, clamp it in, then I can run a whole bunch of pieces and I'm all good to go, and I know that I'm very consistent. So let me set that up and run a couple of cuts. We'll clamp this in place. And be ready to go. Okay, so the next steps that we're gonna, or the next cuts that we're gonna make, would be the 1/4 inch cuts where the dividers go in all the way across, and then that also makes the final cut at the end. Normally I would be making that 7 and 13/16 cut. Since my pieces are kind of short, I'm just gonna kind of shorten them up a little bit, and let's just make 5.5. Easy number. And the nice part about this setup is, yeah, you have to be kind of close, but if you're off a little bit on the one dimension, you repeat the same error all the way through, and they're all cut the same length. So the other part that we're going to have to make are the dividers, so let me get some stock for that as well. Okay, we're back. Alright, so now the next cut to make is on the dividers, and since the dividers just have a little small piece that goes into the end, into the sides, into the top and bottom, one on each end, we don't need that big long 2.5 inch cut. So I have my stop set up for 3/4 of an inch, and I'll just cut off our 3 cuts. On the wide surface, we're going to make 1 cut across. On the short surface, then we'll make cuts on both sides. So we'll go ahead and rip those through. Okay, so if you notice I only cut 2 dividers, I'm just doing 1 vertical, 1 horizontal, and we will be all good to go. So, talked about moving the stop over, and we'll just set it at and let's do 5. Okay, so now here is the fun and magic of what that little nub can really do. I'm going to make a cut, same cut, using this right side of the cut that I made. Drops right into the little notch. Let me see if I can zoom right in there. So there's our nub, and as we do it, each side that I've already cut drops right onto that notch. When we make our next cut, it'll drop onto the next notch, and if we have 10 cuts, every one of them is exactly the same length because we're measuring off of the last cut. So let's go ahead and rip through those cuts. Alright, so the next cut that we're going to want to make is on the side rail. This piece right here, this face, is the same as this cut for that 45 degree, same dimension. We're going to go ahead and leave this a little bit long, and then after we cut this, then we'll put it over in the chop saw and get that dimension right on. So that will be the starting on the side to make the cut that makes that angle right in there. So I have my saw set up for about 1 inch, and I'm going to cut this piece, and I already had that one done, so just need to cut that one side for now. Okay, so for the sides, there is a specific dimension. I'm going to set these just to 6 right now for this little test piece. I came up with a Excel spreadsheet that has all of the dimensions. I also have the 3D model of what I put together, but the Excel spreadsheet, if you email me at ClevelandWindowsGuy@yahoo.com, I'll email you the spreadsheet, and if you have any other questions or anything along the way, just let me know. So this one's at 6 inches, so we're going to cut our 6-inch piece here, and then a 6-inch and 6-inch, and we'll be good with this step. Okay. Alright, so fun fact here. On your horizontal rails, you're going to cut the same grooves all the way through. On your vertical rails, because we want the whole vertical piece to have one continuous little center piece all the way up, you're going to cut backwards from this piece down to that piece. So the sides will always get cut the same, but it's just the short dimension. It's either cutting on the face that you're going to see, or it's going to be behind. Alright, so we have all that cut. Now, normally, or you'd think we'd go over to the, cut all the angles in all this to see if we're all happy, but we actually wait a little bit for that because we want to get some other cuts into here. So next step is taking Alright, so next step, this piece right here will fit into that side piece. So in order to get square peg to go in there, and that little peg doesn't have to be that long, to get that in there, let's go over to the drill press. You don't necessarily need to use a drill press. If you're fairly steady hand, even with just a little cordless drill, pop a 1/4 inch hole, and towards the end, razor blade or chisel, you can square up that little hole, or you can put a round hole in there and round off that, so that you just want a little something in there to hold these a little bit better than on these end surfaces.